Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ship Destiny and looked at the stars ahead. Behind him, Earth was dying. The blue planet that had been home to humans for thousands of years was now dark and broken. Black smoke rose from its surface. Like the breath of a dying giant, Jake was 35 years old and had been in space for most of his adult life. He had seen many worlds, but none had prepared him for this moment. His hands shook as he gripped the metal rail in front of him. The weight of 50,000 lives pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain. "Captain, we have all 12 ships ready to jump," said his first officer, Pete Davis. Pete was a good man, calm under pressure, and Jake trusted him completely. They had served together for 8 years, through good times and bad. But nothing had been as bad as this. Jake nodded slowly. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations. Their faces were pale and tired. Many had not slept in days. The evacuation of Earth had taken 72 hours of non-stop work. They had saved 50,000 people from a world of 8 billion. The math was simple and terrible. The void swarm had come without warning 3 weeks ago. They were not like the aliens in old movies. They did not want to talk or make deals. They simply consumed everything in their path. Their ships were black and moved like insects across space. When they touched a planet, all life died within hours. "Sir, we are getting reports from the other ships," said Communications Officer Lisa Carter. She was young, maybe 25, with red hair and green eyes that had seen too much death recently. "The medical ships are full. The transport ships are packed beyond safe limits. Everyone is scared." Jake understood their fear. He felt it too, deep in his chest like a cold stone, but he could not show it. A captain had to be strong, even when the world was ending. "Tell them we will find a new home," Jake said. His voice was steady, though his heart was racing. "Tell them humanity will survive." Lisa nodded and turned back to her station. Jake watched her work and wondered if his words were true. Could 50,000 people really rebuild their entire species? The scientists said it was possible, but barely. They would need luck, time, and a safe place to grow. The nearest safe planet was in the Alpha Centauri system, 4 light-years away. Their ships were damaged from the evacuation. Some had holes in their hulls. Others had engines that might fail. At any moment, the journey would take 6 months if everything went perfectly. Jake knew that nothing ever went perfectly in space. "Captain," called out engineer Carlos Martinez from his station. Carlos was a short man with dark skin and careful hands. He could fix anything that was broken, but even he looked worried now. "The fusion drives are running hot. We pushed them too hard during the evacuation. I do not know if they will last the full journey." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. More bad news. The list of problems grew longer every hour. Food supplies were low. Medical equipment was damaged. The children were getting sick from the stress and bad air. Some of the older people had already died from weak hearts. "Do what you can, Carlos," Jake said. "We need those engines." "Yes, sir. I will keep them running somehow." Danny Rodriguez, the best pilot in the fleet, looked up from his control panel. Danny was Jake's age, but looked older. The stress of the last few weeks had put gray in his black hair. "Captain, we should jump soon. The longer we stay here, the more chance the void swarm might find us." Jake knew Danny was right. The enemy ships were still in the solar system, though they seemed to be leaving. Sensors showed most of the swarm moving toward the outer planets. They were probably consuming the mining stations and research bases there. Soon they would be gone, but not yet. 5 more minutes, Jake said. "I want to say goodbye." The crew understood. They all felt the same way. Earth had been their mother, and now she was dying. It felt wrong to leave without some kind of ceremony. some way to honor what they were losing. Jake walked to the main viewing window. Through the thick glass, he could see Earth in the distance. The planet looked smaller than he remembered. The lights of the cities were gone. The green of the forests had turned to brown. The blue of the oceans was hidden under clouds of ash and smoke. "My God," whispered Amy Stevens, the chief medical officer. She had come onto the bridge to give Jake a report about the injured people. Amy was a kind woman who had worked without sleep to save as many lives as possible. "It looks so dead." "It is dead," said Security Chief Ron Walker. Ron was a big man with a deep voice and strong opinions. He had argued against waiting so long to leave. "We need to go now, before we join it." Jake was about to give the order to jump when Lisa suddenly sat up straight at her station. Her face went white, and she pressed her hand to her ear, listening to something on her headset. "Captain," she said, her voice shaking, "I am picking up a signal from Earth." The bridge went quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Lisa. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "What kind of signal?" he asked. Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "It is a radio transmission. Very weak, but clear. It is coming from the surface, from what used to be New York City." "The Void Swarm left survivors?" Pete asked. "That is impossible. We saw them consume everything." "I do not think it is the swarm," Lisa said. She looked confused and amazed. "Captain, you need to hear this." She pressed a button, and suddenly the bridge filled with music. It was a violin, playing a slow and beautiful melody. The notes were clear and sweet, rising and falling like a sad song. Jake had heard the tune before, though he could not remember where. The crew stood in silence, listening to the impossible music floating up from their dead world. Some of them had tears in their eyes. Jake felt his own eyes getting wet. "Someone is still alive down there," he whispered. "Someone is still playing music while the world burns." The violin continued to play, its voice carrying across the empty space between the ship and Earth. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing Jake had ever heard. The violin music played for 3 more minutes before it stopped. The bridge of the Destiny was silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Jake Morrison stared at the communication panel, waiting for the music to start again. It did not. "Lisa, can you find the exact location of that signal?" Jake asked. Lisa Carter worked quickly at her station. Her fingers moved over the controls as she tried to track the radio waves back to their source. "Yes, sir. It is coming from Manhattan, from the area where Carnegie Hall used to be." Pete Davis shook his head. "Captain, this does not make sense. We saw the Void Swarm destroy everything in that area. How could anyone survive?" Jake did not have an answer. The Void Swarm had been thorough in their destruction. They had not just killed people. They had poisoned the air and water. They had burned the cities and broken the ground itself. Nothing should have been able to live through that. "Maybe they missed someone," Amy Stevens said. "Maybe someone was deep underground when the attack happened." "For 3 weeks?" Ron Walker asked. "Without food or clean water? No way." Jake made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "Danny, prep the shuttle. We are going down there." The bridge crew turned to stare at him. Pete stepped forward, his face full of worry. "Captain, you cannot be serious. Earth is still toxic. The radiation levels are off the charts. Going down there would be suicide." "Someone is alive down there," Jake said firmly. "A human being who survived the worst attack in our history. We cannot just leave them." "We can send a message," Ron suggested. "Tell them to find a way to get to orbit. We have shuttles that can pick them up from the upper atmosphere. And if they cannot reach orbit, if they are trapped or injured..." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. "We do not leave people behind. That is not who we are." Lisa suddenly looked up from her station. "Captain, the signal is starting again." The violin music filled the bridge once more. This time Jake recognized the melody. It was an old song, one his grandmother used to hum when he was a child. The notes were slow and sad, but there was something else in the music. Hope, maybe. Or determination. Jake listened to the song and felt something change inside him. For the first time in weeks, he felt like they might actually survive this disaster. If someone could make beautiful music while the world died around them, then humanity was stronger than he had thought. "Danny, I want you and Amy to come with me," Jake said. "We will take the small shuttle. Pete, you have command while I am gone." "Sir, I strongly advise against this mission," Pete said. "We cannot risk losing you. These people need their captain." "These people need to know that we do not abandon our own," Jake replied. "Besides, whoever is down there might have information we need. They might know if there are other survivors." Amy Stevens was already moving toward the shuttle bay. "I will get my medical kit and some radiation suits. If someone has survived 3 weeks on Earth, they will need medical attention." Danny Rodriguez nodded and headed to his station to prepare the shuttle. "I can have us ready to launch in 20 minutes. "But Captain, the atmospheric conditions are really bad down there. Flying will be dangerous." "Everything is dangerous now," Jake said. "That does not mean we stop trying." 30 minutes later, Jake found himself strapped into the pilot's seat of the shuttle Horizon. Amy sat behind him, checking her medical supplies. Danny was in the co-pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls as they dropped toward Earth. The planet looked even worse up close. Where New York City used to shine with millions of lights, there was only darkness. The void swarm had left behind a wasteland of broken concrete and twisted metal. The air was thick with ash and poisonous gases. "Radiation levels are high, but not deadly," Amy reported. "The suits will protect us for a few hours." Danny flew the shuttle carefully through the toxic clouds. The navigation systems were having trouble with all the interference from the destroyed city. He had to rely on his instincts and years of flying experience. "There," Jake said, pointing through the front window. "I can see what is left of Carnegie Hall." The famous concert hall was mostly destroyed. The roof had collapsed, and the rumpu walls were cracked and black. But part of the building was still standing. And from somewhere inside, the violin music was playing. Danny landed the shuttle in what used to be a park across from the hall. The ground was covered with ash and debris. Nothing green remained. The trees were black sticks reaching toward gray sky. They put on their radiation suits and stepped out of the shuttle. Jake had been in space for years, but walking on the dead Earth felt stranger than being on any alien world. This had been home, and now it was like walking through a graveyard. The violin music was clearer now. It was coming from inside the ruined concert hall. Jake led the way across the broken street, stepping carefully over chunks of concrete and twisted metal. The main entrance to Carnegie Hall was blocked by fallen beams. But Danny found a side door that was partly open. They squeezed through the gap and found themselves in a dark hallway. Emergency lights flickered weakly, powered by some kind of backup system. The air inside was cleaner than outside, but it still smelled of smoke and death. They followed the sound of the violin deeper into the building. They found him in what used to be the main concert hall. An old man sat alone on the stage, playing a violin. He was thin and pale, with white hair and kind eyes. His clothes were dirty and torn, but his hands were steady as he drew the bow across the strings. The man looked up when he saw them. He did not seem surprised. He finished the song he was playing and then set the violin carefully on his lap. "I wondered when someone would come," he said. His voice was weak but calm. "I have been playing for weeks, hoping someone would hear." Jake removed his helmet. The air was safe enough inside the building. "Sir, I am Captain Jake Morrison. We heard your music from space. How did you survive?" The old man smiled. "My name is Frank Bailey. I was the music director here before everything ended. When the attack started, I hid in the old tunnels under the building. They go deep, deeper than the aliens looked." Amy stepped forward with her medical scanner. "Mr. Bailey, you need medical attention. And food. How have you been surviving down here?" Frank pointed to several containers near the stage. "Emergency supplies. This building was designed to be a shelter if needed. I have enough food and water for maybe another week. We need to get you out of here," Jake said. "We have ships. We can take you to safety." Frank Bailey looked around the destroyed concert hall. "This was my life for 40 years. I conducted orchestras on this stage. I taught children to love music in these rooms. It is hard to leave. There will be music again," Jake promised. "Somewhere else on a new world. But first we need to survive." Frank nodded slowly. Then his eyes brightened. "Captain, before we go, there is something you need to know. This building and others like it around the world, we prepared for disasters. We have archives hidden in the tunnels. Music, art, books, movies. The culture of humanity stored safely underground." Jake felt his heart race. "How much? Everything we could save. Hundreds of years of human creativity, protected in quantum storage drives. If humanity is really starting over somewhere else, you will need these things. They are what make us who we are." Frank Bailey led Jake, Danny, and Amy down into the tunnels beneath Carnegie Hall. The old man moved slowly, but knew exactly where to go. Emergency lights cast long shadows on the concrete walls. Their footsteps echoed in the darkness. "These tunnels were built during the old wars," Frank explained as they walked. "They connect to subway systems and other buildings. When the Void Swarm attacked, I knew this was the only safe place." They reached a heavy metal door marked with radiation warning signs. Frank entered a code on a keypad, and the door opened. With a loud click, inside was a room filled with small black boxes, each no bigger than a book. "Quantum storage drives," Frank said proudly. "Each one holds thousands of hours of music, art, literature, and film. We started this project 20 years ago, in case something like this ever happened." Jake picked up one of the drives. It was surprisingly light. "How many are there?" 200 drives here. But there are more locations. Los Angeles, London, Tokyo, Sydney. We built 12 archive sites around the world. If even half survived the attack, you would have most of human culture preserved." Amy checked her radiation detector. "We need to move fast. The exposure time is getting dangerous." Jake made a quick decision. "Danny, help me load these drives into transport cases. Amy, check Mr. Bailey for radiation sickness. Frank, I need the locations of the other archive sites." Frank sat down heavily on a metal chair. He looked tired and sick. "Captain, I need to tell you something. I am not leaving Earth." Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at the old man. "Sir, you have to come with us," Jake said. "We cannot leave you here to die." Frank smiled sadly. "I am already dying, Captain. Radiation poisoning. I have maybe a few days left. But more important than that, this is my home. I was born in New York. I learned music in this building. I met my wife at a concert on that stage upstairs. This is where I belong." Jake felt anger and sadness mixed together in his chest. "You survived 3 weeks when everyone else died. You kept playing music. When the world ended, humanity needs people like you. Humanity needs its culture more than it needs one old musician," Frank replied. He pulled a small device from his pocket. This contains the locations of all 12 archive sites and the access codes. Some of the sites might be damaged, but others should be intact. Jake took the device. It felt heavier than it should have. Weighted with the responsibility of preserving human civilization. The drives here represent about 8% of our total archives, Frank continued. If you can reach the other sites, you will have everything. Every symphony ever written. Every painting ever created. Every story ever told. Danny had finished loading the drives from Carnegie Hall. There were 57 of them, packed carefully in radiation-proof cases. Captain, we need to go. The shuttle's radiation shielding can only protect us for so long. Jake looked at Frank. Bailey one more time. The old man had saved something precious for humanity's future. But the cost of retrieving all the archives would be enormous. They returned to the shuttle and flew back to the Destiny. During the flight, Jake studied the list of archive locations Frank had given him. The sites were scattered across the globe. Reaching them all would take weeks and use massive amounts of fuel. When they docked with the main ship, Pete Davis was waiting with a grim expression. Captain, we have a problem. Carlos ran the numbers while you were gone. Our fuel situation is worse than we thought. Jake, Amy, and Danny gathered in the ship's conference room with the senior officers. Carlos Martinez had charts and calculations spread across the table. The evacuation damaged our fusion drives more than we realized, Carlos explained. To reach Alpha Centauri with our current fuel levels, we need to maintain strict rationing. No extra trips, no detours, no waste. What if we collect the other archives? Jake asked. Carlos shook his head. Impossible. Visiting all 12 sites would use 60% of our remaining fuel. We would die in space before reaching our new home. The room was quiet as everyone considered this information. Finally, Ron Walker spoke up. Captain, the choice is simple. We save the people, or we save the books. We cannot do both. They are. Not just books, Amy said firmly. They are everything that makes us human. Music, art, stories, history. Without them, what are we? We are alive, Ron replied. That is what matters. We can create new culture on our new world. Jake looked around the table at his officers. They were good people, but they were scared. The weight of 50,000 lives made every decision. Feel impossible. There is another option, Pete said quietly. We could split the fleet. Everyone turned to look at the first officer. Pete rarely spoke, unless he had something important to say. Some ships go directly to Alpha Centauri, Pete continued. Others stay behind to collect the archives. The archive ships would have less fuel, so they would travel slower, but they might still make it. Might is not good enough, Ron said. You are talking about sending people to their deaths for music and paintings. I am talking about preserving the soul of humanity, Pete replied. What is the point of surviving if we lose everything that made us worth saving? Jake studied the star charts on the table. The plan was risky, maybe impossible. But Frank Bailey had risked his life to save human culture. Could Jake do any less? How many ships would we need for the archive mission? Jake asked. Carlos did quick calculations. 4 ships minimum. 2 for collection. 2 for extra fuel and supplies. That leaves 8 ships for the direct route to Alpha Centauri. And the chances of the archive ships making it to our destination? Maybe 60% if everything goes perfectly. Maybe 20% if we have problems. The room fell silent again. Jake could hear the quiet hum of the ship's life support systems. Somewhere on the ship, children were crying. People were afraid and tired, and hoping their captain would make the right choice. I need to think about this, Jake said finally. We will meet again in 2 hours. Everyone should consider what they would want to do. As the officers left the conference room, Jake remained alone with the quantum storage drives from Carnegie Hall. He picked up one of the small black boxes and wondered what was inside. Maybe a recording of his grandmother singing. Maybe a painting that had made someone cry with joy. Maybe a story that had changed someone's life. Outside the conference room windows, Earth hung in space like a broken jewel. Soon they would leave it forever. The question was whether they would take humanity's heart with them or leave it behind in the darkness. 2 hours later, Jake Morrison sat in his private quarters staring at the quantum storage drive in his hands. He had been trying to decide what to do, but every choice seemed wrong. Save the people and lose their culture, or risk everything for art and music that might not matter if they were all dead. A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Lisa Carter entered, looking nervous. She held a tablet in her hands and seemed to have something important to say. "Captain, I have been analyzing the archives we brought back from Earth. I found something you need to see." Jake set down the storage drive and looked at Lisa's tablet. The screen showed a list of files, but the names were strange. Many were in languages he did not recognize. "What am I looking at?" Jake asked. "These files are not just human culture." Lisa explained. "There are works created with other species. Alien species. Captain Earth has been in contact with dozens of alien civilizations for over 50 years. Jake felt his world shift. "That is impossible. We would have known. The government would have told us." "It was kept secret from most people," Lisa continued. "But the cultural archives show everything. Collaborative music between humans and beings from the Centauri system. Art projects with species from the far side of the galaxy. Stories written by humans and aliens working together." Jake looked through the files on the tablet. There were thousands of them. Songs that mixed human instruments with alien sounds he had never heard. Paintings that showed landscapes from worlds he could not imagine. Stories that talked about friendship between species separated by light years of space. "How is this possible?" Jake asked. "The files include communication logs," Lisa said. "It started small, about 60 years ago. Radio signals from other worlds. Scientists figured out how to translate them. At first, it was just mathematics and basic information. But then they started sharing art and music." Jake scrolled through more files. There were recordings of human musicians playing with alien partners they had never met in person. There were paintings created by human artists based on descriptions from aliens who saw colors humans could not see. Why was this kept secret? "The logs say the governments were afraid," Lisa replied. "They thought people would panic if they knew aliens existed. So they kept it quiet and let only certain artists and musicians participate in the exchanges." Jake stood up and paced around his small room. This changed everything. If Earth had been part of some kind of galactic cultural network, then the archives were not just important to humanity. They might be important to dozens of other species. "Lisa, can you trace where these alien signals came from?" "Some of them, yes. The communication logs have star coordinates." "Captain, some of these civilizations are close to our route to Alpha Centauri. Others are scattered across the galaxy." Jake made a decision. "I want you to send a message to all the senior officers. Emergency meeting in the conference room in 10 minutes. And Lisa, keep this information quiet until we decide what to do with it." The conference room filled quickly. Pete, Carlos, Amy, Danny, and Ron all took their seats around the table. Jake could see the stress on their faces. Everyone knew the next few hours would determine their fate. "I have new information about the archives," Jake began. "Lisa, show them what you found." Lisa connected her tablet to the main display screen. The alien collaboration files appeared for everyone to see. The room was silent as the officers read through the list. "My God," Amy whispered. We have been talking to aliens for 50 years? Not just talking, Jake said. Creating art together, making music together. These archives are not just human culture. They are part of something much bigger. Carlos studied the star charts showing the locations of the alien civilizations. Captain, if this is true, then maybe these alien species could help us. Maybe we do not have to make this journey alone. Or maybe they are all dead, Ron said grimly. The Void Swarm has been moving across the galaxy for years. They could have destroyed these other civilizations too. Jake had been thinking the same thing, but he had also been thinking about something else. What if we sent a message? Jake asked. What if we broadcast the cultural archives to these alien coordinates? Let them know what happened to Earth and that we are trying to preserve what we created together. Pete leaned forward. That is a big risk, Captain. Broadcasting our location could attract the Void Swarm or other hostile species. But it could also attract friends, Amy said. If these aliens have been working with humans for 50 years, they might want to help us. Jake looked around the table at his officers. I am not talking about abandoning the archive mission. I am talking about expanding it. We collect as many archives as we can from Earth, and we broadcast them to our alien partners as we travel to Alpha Centauri. That would use even more fuel, Carlos warned. The broadcasting equipment needs a lot of power, but it would also send a message across the galaxy that humanity is still alive, Jake replied. That we are carrying forward the work we started with these other species. Danny had been quiet during the discussion, but now he spoke up. Captain, what if the aliens respond? What if they come to help us? Jake had been hoping someone would ask that question. Then maybe we do not have to choose between saving our people and saving our culture. Maybe we can do both. The room was silent as everyone considered this possibility. It was a long shot, maybe an impossible dream. But it was also the first hope they had felt since leaving Earth. I vote we try it, Amy said. If we are going to risk everything, let us risk it for something worthy. I agree, Pete said. The cultural network shows that humans have always been good at making friends across the galaxy. Maybe it is time to ask our friends for help, Carlos nodded. I can modify the broadcasting equipment to send the archives while we travel. It will use fuel, but not as much as I first thought. Danny raised his hand. I can lead the archive collection. Teams, we can hit the major sites and be back in the fleet within a week. Jake looked at Ron, who had been against the archive mission from the beginning. The security chief sat quietly for a moment, then sighed. I still think this is crazy, Ron said. But if we are going to be crazy, we might as well be crazy in a big way. I will make sure the archive teams have proper security. Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. His officers were with him. They would collect the archives, broadcast them to the galaxy, and hope that somewhere among the stars, someone would hear their call for help. All right, Jake said. We leave for the archive sites in 12 hours. Lisa, I want you to prepare the first broadcast. Include everything we found at Carnegie Hall and a message explaining what happened to Earth. As the officers left to prepare for the mission, Jake remained in the conference room. Through the windows, he could see the other ships in their fleet. 50,000 people trusting him to make the right choices. He picked up one of the quantum storage drives and held it up to the light. Inside this small device were the dreams and hopes of 2 species, maybe more. Human and alien voices singing. Together across the vast darkness of space, for the first time since leaving Earth, Jake Morrison smiled. The archive recovery mission began at dawn. 4 ships broke away from the main fleet and headed back toward Earth. Jake Morrison watched them go from the bridge of the Destiny, knowing that he was sending good people into terrible danger. Danny Rodriguez commanded the recovery ship Eagle, with teams ready to visit the archive sites in North America. Amy Stevens led the medical ship Hope toward Europe and Africa. 2 smaller ships, the Swift and the Brave, headed for Asia and Australia. "First broadcast ready, Captain," Lisa Carter announced from her station. She had worked all night to prepare. The transmission that would carry their message across the galaxy. Jake nodded. "Send it on all frequencies. Let everyone know that humanity is still alive." The broadcast began with Frank Bailey's violin music, the same melody that had brought them back to Earth. Then came Jake's voice, speaking slowly and clearly so that alien translation systems could understand. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human evacuation fleet. Earth has been destroyed by an enemy we call the Void Swarm. We are the survivors. 50,000 people carrying the cultural heritage of our world. For 50 years, humans have worked with alien species to create music, art, and stories together. We are broadcasting these collaborative works as we travel to Alpha Centauri. If anyone receives this message, please know that the friendship between our species continues even in our darkest hour." The message went out into space, followed by hours of music and art created by humans and aliens working together. Jake hoped that somewhere in the galaxy, someone was listening. 3 days later, the recovery teams reached their targets. Danny's team landed in what used to be Los Angeles and found the archive site buried under a collapsed building. It took 6 hours to dig through the rubble, but they recovered 400 storage drives. Amy's team had better luck in London. The archive site that was built inside an old underground train station. The Void Swarm had not found it. They collected 600 drives containing European and African cultural works. But it was the team in Tokyo that made the most important discovery. When they opened the vault beneath the old Imperial Palace, they found something unexpected. The storage drives were still connected to a computer system that was running automated broadcasts. "Captain," came Danny's voice over the radio. "The Tokyo site has been broadcasting for 3 weeks, not just to space, but to coordinates all across the galaxy. It looks like the system was programmed to activate if Earth was ever attacked." Jake felt his pulse quicken. "What kind of broadcasts?" "Distress signals mixed with cultural archives." "And Captain, the system shows that it has received responses. Lots of them." Jake ordered all teams to return immediately. While they traveled back to the fleet, Lisa worked to decode the messages that had been sent to the Tokyo archive site. What she found changed everything. "Captain, we have received over 200 responses from 47 different star systems," Lisa reported when the recovery teams had returned. "Most are expressing sorrow about Earth's destruction, but others are offering help." Jake studied the messages on Lisa's screen. They were in dozens of alien languages, but the translation software could handle most of them. The messages told an amazing story. The cultural network that Earth had joined was much larger than anyone had imagined. Hundreds of species across. The galaxy had been sharing art, music, and stories for thousands of years. Earth had been a newcomer to this network, but human creativity had made a strong impression. "Look at this message," Lisa said, pointing to one transmission. "It is from a species called the Melodians. They live in the Vega system. They say that human music has become very popular on their world. They want to help us find a new home." Another message came from the Zephyrians, who lived near the center of the galaxy. They had been creating visual art based on human poetry for 20 years. They offered to send supply ships to help the human fleet. But the most important message was from a species called the Harmony Collective. Their transmission was longer than the others and included detailed star charts. "Captain," Lisa translated, "the Harmony Collective says they have been watching the Void Swarm's movements for years. They know where the swarm is going next, and they have a plan to stop them." Jake felt hope and fear mixed together in his chest. What kind of plan? Lisa continued reading the alien message. They say the Void Swarm is not just destroying planets. For resources. They are looking for something specific. Something they have not found yet. The Harmony Collective thinks they know what it is. And what is that? Music, Captain. The Swarm is looking for the source of galactic music. They want to destroy the cultural network that connects all these species. Earth was attacked because our music had become so popular across the galaxy. Jake stared at the message in amazement. Humanity had been targeted not because they were weak, but because their creativity was too strong. Their music and art had made them a threat to the Void Swarm's plans. There is more, Lisa continued. The Harmony Collective is gathering a fleet from dozens of species. They plan to make a stand against the Void Swarm at a place called the Resonance Point, where all the cultural broadcasting stations meet. They want us to bring our archives there. Pete Davis had been listening to the conversation from his station. Captain, the Resonance Point is not on our route to Alpha Centauri. Going there would add months to our journey. And use fuel we do not. Have, Carlos added from Engineering Dot, but Jake was thinking about something else. If the Void Swarm was specifically hunting the cultural network, then running away would not save humanity. The Swarm would eventually find them, no matter where they went. What if we do not run? Jake said quietly. The bridge crew turned to look. At him, Jake could see confusion and worry on their faces. Captain, we cannot fight the Void Swarm, Ron said. They destroyed Earth in 3 weeks. Our 12 ships would not last 3 minutes against them. Not alone, Jake replied, but with hundreds of allied ships, with species that have been preparing for this fight. Maybe we have a chance. Amy Stevens had been reviewing the alien. Messages on her own tablet. Captain, look at this. The Harmony Collective says they have been studying human military history. They think our tactics and strategies could be valuable in the fight against the Swarm. Jake walked to the main viewing window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien species were preparing for a battle that would determine the future of culture and creativity in the galaxy. Humanity had a choice. Hide in the darkness and hope to survive, or stand with their friends and fight for something greater than survival. Lisa, send a response to the Harmony Collective, Jake ordered. Tell them that humanity accepts their invitation. We will bring our cultural archives to the Resonance Point. Captain, Pete said urgently, we need to discuss this with the other ship commanders. This decision affects 50,000 lives. Jake nodded. You are right. Call a fleet meeting. Every ship captain, every department head. We will vote on this together. As the bridge crew prepared for the fleet-wide conference, Jake continued staring out at the stars. Frank Bailey's violin music played softly over the ship's communication system. BROADCAST, automatically every hour as a beacon for any allies who might be listening. The music was beautiful and sad, but it was also something else. It was defiant. It was a declaration that humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. They would sing and create and dream until their very last breath. Maybe, with help from friends they had never met, they would do more than just survive. Maybe they would win. The fleet meeting lasted 6 hours. Every ship captain argued about Jake's plan to join the alien alliance at the Resonance Point. Some thought it was their duty to fight. Others believed their only responsibility was to keep the survivors alive. Captain Maria Santos of the transport ship New Hope spoke for many when she said, "We cannot risk 50,000 lives on the promise of help from aliens we have never met." But Captain Ben Clark of the medical ship Mercy disagreed. "If we run and hide, the Void Swarm will find us eventually. At least this way, we have a chance to stop them." Jake listened to every argument. In the end, the vote was close. 7 ships voted to join the Alien Alliance. 5 ships voted to continue to Alpha Centauri. The fleet would split again. Those who want to continue to our original destination have that right, Jake announced. Those who want to fight for the future of galactic culture can follow me to the resonance point. 3 days later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Destiny and watched 5 ships disappear into hyperspace, heading for Alpha Centauri. 25,000 people had chosen safety over the unknown. Jake hoped they would find the peaceful life they wanted. The remaining 7 ships, carrying 25,000 souls and all the cultural archives from Earth, set course for the resonance point. The journey would take 2 months through dangerous space. On the first week of travel, they encountered their first alien allies. 3 beautiful ships with silver hulls appeared alongside the human fleet. They were from the Melodian species, the ones who loved human music. Lisa translated their greeting message. Welcome, humans. We have been listening to your songs for 20 years. We are honored to travel with the creators of such beautiful music. Jake responded with a message of his own. We are honored to meet you. Your friendship gives us hope. The Melodian ships shared their fuel and supplies with the human fleet. More importantly, they shared their knowledge. The Melodians had been fighting the Void Swarm for 50 years. They knew the enemy's tactics and weaknesses. The swarm fears music, the Melodian commander explained through the translation system. Sound waves disrupt their ship systems. That is why they destroy cultural centers, first in every attack. As the combined fleet traveled toward the resonance point, more allies joined them. The Zephyrians brought ships that looked like giant butterflies. The crystal singers from the Rigel system had vessels that hummed with harmonic frequencies. Each species had been touched by human culture in some way. Amy Stevens spent hours talking with alien doctors, learning how different species used music and art to heal emotional wounds. Danny Rodriguez worked with alien pilots to coordinate flight patterns for the coming battle, but it was Lisa Carter who made the most important discovery. While studying the alien communication systems, she realized something amazing about Frank Bailey's violin music. Captain, she reported excitedly, the melody that Mr. Bailey was playing contains mathematical patterns that work as a universal translator. The song itself can be understood by any intelligent species. Jake thought about the old musician who had chosen to stay on Earth. Frank had done more than preserve human culture. He had created a bridge between species that had never met. Months after leaving Earth's system, the combined fleet arrived at the resonance point. Jake had never seen anything like it. The resonance point was not a planet or a star. It was a massive structure built in space, shaped like a giant musical instrument. Hundreds of alien ships surrounded the station. Species that had been creating art together across the galaxy for thousands of years were finally meeting in person. The radio waves around the station carried music in a dozen different styles, all blending together in perfect harmony. Captain, Pete Davis said with wonder in his voice, look at the size of this fleet. There must be over 1,000 ships here. Jake nodded, feeling amazed and proud at the same time. Humanity had been part of something beautiful without even knowing it. Now they would fight to protect that beauty. The Harmony Collective leaders welcomed Jake aboard their flagship. They were tall, graceful beings with 4 arms and voices that sounded like singing. Their commander, who called herself Echo, spoke perfect English. Your species has brought something special to our cultural network, Echo explained. Human emotions and music are deeper than anything we have heard before. The Void Swarm knows this. That is why they targeted Earth first. What is their plan? Jake asked. Echo led him to a large display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked the path of the Void Swarm's destruction. They are moving toward the galactic center, where the main cultural broadcasting station is located. If they destroy that station, The network connecting all our species will be broken forever. And our plan to stop them? We fight them here, at the resonance point. This station amplifies cultural broadcasts across the galaxy. If we can hold this position and keep broadcasting during the battle, our music and art will disrupt their ship systems. Jake understood. The battle would not be won with weapons alone. It would be won with the power of creativity itself. The Void Swarm arrived 3 days later. Their ships were black and moved like insects, just as Jake remembered from Earth's destruction. But this time, they faced not one defenseless planet, but 1,000 ships from dozens of species. The battle began with music. Every ship in the highs. Allied fleet broadcast cultural works at full power. Human symphonies mixed with Melodian harmonies. Zephyrian visual poems combined with crystal singer frequencies. The space around the resonance point filled with the greatest collaborative artwork in galactic history. The Void Swarm ships slowed and wavered as the music hit them. Their formations broke apart. Some ships collided with each other as their navigation systems failed. "It is working," Lisa shouted over the noise of the battle. "The music is disrupting their technology." But the swarm was learning to adapt. Their ships began grouping together in patterns that resisted the musical interference. The battle turned into a real fight. With energy weapons and missile strikes. Jake watched alien ships sacrifice themselves to protect the resonance point. Species that had been strangers a month ago now fought side by side like old friends. And at the center of it all, Frank Bailey's violin melody played on every frequency, holding the alliance together. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, half the ships on both sides were destroyed or damaged. But the Void Swarm was defeated. The surviving enemy ships retreated into deep space, their formation broken, and their mission failed. Jake stood on the bridge of the Destiny, exhausted but victorious. Around him, his crew cheered as messages of celebration poured in. From the Allied fleet. "Captain," Amy said with tears in her eyes, "we did it. We actually did it." Through the main viewer, Jake could see the resonance point still broadcasting its beautiful music to the galaxy. The cultural network that connected dozens of species was safe. And somewhere in that music, Frank Bailey's violin melody continued to play, a bridge between worlds and species. Years later, on humanity's new homeworld near the resonance point, Jake would teach children about the old musician who saved the galaxy with a song. He would tell them how their species had found its greatest strength, not in war or technology, but in the simple human ability to create beauty in the darkest times. And every evening, as the twin suns set over their new home, the sounds of human and alien music would drift across the settlement, proving that some things truly do go on forever among the stars.